Hi, I'm Jennetta Billhimer, and welcome to our interview today. Today, I am going to be speaking with Amy Earle, and she has been homeschooling her children now for, did you say 15 years?
Yeah, we sure have.
She is the homeschool mom of four. She's an entrepreneur, an author. She's amazing. And so I just had to have her on. So welcome, Amy, and thank you for being with us today.
I am so excited to be here. I love talking about homeschool, sharing some of our experiences, and however I can help those who might be listening who are kind of trying to navigate their way through this process. I'm excited for that opportunity.
Well, and Amy it's her mission in life to promote freedom, and she loves to, she empowers and she educates and she encourages moms as they're raising the next generation of leaders, which is huge. Just a huge responsibility to think about.
Yeah, I
And
think today what we have found so much so, especially in the education, when we talk about education, as homeschoolers, we sometimes have a little bit different perspective, but we have been trained, we have previous generations, they have an idea of what education is. And I think it's becoming more and more focused instead of more broad. And when you talk about raising leaders, we need a more broad perspective of education. We have to have more breadth and more experiences to help our children to navigate the future and what they're going to be called upon to do. And I think right now we're really at a crucial turning point. Like, there's a lot happening in the world today, and helping our kids to understand their mission and their purpose and making sure that they're ready when that time comes is a really important piece for us, as homeschoolers to help our children be prepared for that.
we certainly are seeing a lot of different things like that, aren't we? We're seeing that this really could be a reality, that things are going to be pretty crazy. And just even 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, did we have any idea exactly what that was going to, what that was going to look like? I see that we're moving into these times of, we're seeing that we are going to need leaders in communities and
Yeah,
in our
exactly.
nation. And
And because of, if you kind of understand the times in which we live, that's kind of a cliche, but when you understand the times and you recognize we're at a turning point there, and this is, if you look through history, and there's just turning points in history, and we are in the midst of one. And as we move through this crisis, and there will come a time when we will be rebuilding. So right now, there are those who are leading us through this crisis, and the turning point, whatever happens here, whether we turn towards freedom or we turn more towards tyranny, like whatever happens here during this phase, what we need is the next generation will be a part of the rebuilding. They are going to need an education to match that mission in the rebuilding. We are going to need leaders who have a strong moral character, who understand people and human nature, who understand the lessons from history and have that basis. And I think, and in the time, if you grew up, like you were just saying, in the past when we looked at this, that this becomes, it was not as imperative or as important to 5-10 years ago. Things are pretty good, we're just kind of moving through life. All of a sudden today, there's an energy in the world that is unsettling. We can see things in a different light. And I think understanding the need for leaders is so much more apparent. And I think that's where we find ourselves today.
there's so many now contentions and wars and uncertainty, and we've seen a pandemic and different things, and just things that we perhaps imagined when I was raising my three older children. We were like, you're going to need to be ready for the future, but that wasn't as obvious. The reasons weren't as obvious as they are now. Now we're seeing more of okay, this could be right here, what you'll need, even though we knew some things, because history repeats itself.
Well, and don't you think because of the understanding today that it's broad, it really did bring it to the forefront. Like, it's one thing to say, we need leaders, you're going to need to be prepared. We understand history and we know that there's turnings and cycles and all of those things. Like, you understand it logically, but until you're truly living it, I don't, at least I know I couldn't really understand what was going to be demanded of this time. But now, because I'm living through the crisis, I recognize, now I can see, oh, now I see what we're talking about, and truly have a vision of what we're going to need in the rebuilding, right? In that kind of putting the pieces back together.
Yes, because I think we have children who are the same age, some of our children. I think I have one that's 22, that's about the same age as a couple of your boys.
Yep. So we've got 25, 21, 19, and 12.
And they were kind of going through some of the same programs of leadership education back, a few years ago. What else have you been doing to prepare your children? And what are some things that we need to be thinking about as far as that, helping our children be prepared for the future?
Yeah, that is such a good question. And I think one of the things that has become really apparent to me is what my children need, and what this next generation needs, is they need a broader understanding of what education is and what the purpose of that education is. And like you were just saying, there's right now what we're seeing is a huge divide. We're seeing a division is, and from both sides, no matter how passionate you are, there's this divide that is happening. And the problem is there are so many people left in the middle who don't know what to do. And it's those people in the middle that need leaders. They need people that they can turn to. And when there's so much divisiveness and there's so many people who are ugly, for lack of a better word, in the way that they are sharing and talking and pointing fingers. I know that there's oftentimes I will see things on social media and I'm like, ooh, I really agree with that principle. I really agree with that point, but I don't want to share that because the tone in which it was talking in a condescending or an attacking way. And so what I really feel like we need is the next generation of leaders needs to understand principles that they can share and feel really strongly about and understand the principles. Because if you understand principles, they apply to any circumstance. And so right now we're seeing pandemic, vaccines, masks, mandates. There's all of these circumstances that are happening. And they're very emotionally charged. And because they're so emotionally charged, they are dividing us. Now imagine if leadership were speaking about principles and not about circumstances or emotions. Now we use that to divide because that garners a lot of attention and you can get a lot of like people are going to be looking at you and talking about you. But if you really want to lead, being able to speak about, so what is the principle behind this? And being able to see, okay, this is what happens now, but what's going to happen in the future? Being able to see how that's going to look down the line. And so having that, and that's where I say kind of expanding the idea of education, having more experiences, having more breadth instead of a checklist. I think sometimes it's easy. We want a
It's
checklist. Give
so
me a
easy for me to
checklist.
do checklists. I'm like, okay, we've got to get these things accomplished. And I want you to know all these things before, you leave our home. And, but
Yep.
I mean, now you have traveled all over being a military wife and family. And so you have even, I remember back when you were even living in a bus. Tell us about that experience and some of your experiences this way, how you've been educating, your helping your children with their educations.
So we, as a military family, we've moved a lot with the military, and we made a commitment early on when my husband joined. And there's lots of trainings that they attend, and there's lots of opportunity. And oftentimes the military member just goes and then the family stays behind. They do like temporary duties and these kind of things. And we made the decision early on that if my husband was going, if there was an opportunity for us to go, then we would go with him. And so we've had a lot of change. We've had a lot of moves. We've moved dozens of times around the country. And then for a block of time, we were nomadic, or we lived in a bus. We had a fifth wheel. At one point we spent a whole summer living in Airbnbs throughout Utah. So we've just had lots of different adventures. And one of the reasons we did that is when we were looking at, we have a short amount of time with our children. When they 18, 19 years old, and they're going to be moving on to their future. When we started
like
homeschooling,
such a long time, doesn't it?
Right.
But then it's amazing how day after day after day is really actually going by, and those days are adding up.
Exactly. And it goes, and
and
now I'm looking back, and we've been doing this for 15 years, and it went so quickly that the adage of the days are long, but the years are short is so true.
Yeah.
And so about 15 years ago, I guess, we sat down and we created a vision for what is the education that we want for our children. And by education, meaning what, when they leave our home, what do we want them to be armed with? And when we really got down to what that vision looked like, there wasn't a lot of academics on there. We weren't really thinking like, okay, we want to make sure they know chemistry and biology and be able to have physics. Those, if they showed up at all, came down the list. We want them to be able to make connections with other people. We want them to have a work ethic and to be bold and courageous, to know that they can do hard things, to know how to learn. And we wanted them to have an anchor of faith and strong family connections, strong connections to each other. Like this is the vision that we were creating. And it's interesting how little, if we spent our days focused on academics, how little we would be able to accomplish in the list of who we really wanted them to become. And so we took a different approach, and we took a very experienced-based approach to our education. How many experiences can we be a part of? How many things can we do pushing outside comfort zones? And so in this process, like, we had an opportunity, there was a window of time. Initially, we thought it might be like 6 weeks to 3 months, as my husband was making some shifts between different branches in the military. It turned out to be a year, but we said, okay, we could just like spend the 3 months doing the same thing that we'd been done, but what if we do something different? What if we just, and this was, gosh, about 7 years ago, I think, when we did this. And so we bought an old school bus and we fixed it up and we moved the whole family onto the school bus. And
wasn't it a big blue school bus? And didn't you document it as you went along?
Yep, we sure did. We shared the story, and I, at that time, was running a photography business and I was teaching photography workshops. So we traveled and I would stop and teach workshops. And we took it from Arizona. We drove it to Alaska and shipped it then from Alaska down to Seattle. And then we drove it down the West Coast and then back over to Texas. So we did kind of a big circle around the country. And
How cool.
we just our goal during that time was for our children to be comfortable living life, to find courage in stepping outside of the norms and living life that they could look back and have experiences that have taught them. And what I've found, what we're finding with our kids now as they're kind of moving into the next phase, is they're very comfortable in life. They're very comfortable talking to people and meeting people, and they feel confident in ways that I think they might not have had they not had all the experiences that
Isn't
they
that
have.
interesting that you know, we that our society tries to socialize our children by keeping them in the same age group and in a nice safe box, and you know, we're just going to do it this way, and we're going to teach you how to answer to bells and to, you know, to these kinds of these kind of constraints and all, where you are going out and you're giving your children the, you know, the opportunity to have so many different experiences and meeting with people of all ages, and truly helping them to feel confident to be leaders, to talk to people in the future, even talk to people. That's kind of a hard thing for kids nowadays to do.
Yeah, it led to so many more things, to them being willing to try new experiences. They've each had experiences now outside of the country where they have traveled, and we incorporate a lot of outdoor activities with that. There's so much kind of connection to self that happens in the outdoors. So hiking and camping and backpacking and those kind of things, where putting them in places that are outside a typical textbook, you know, the typical school experience. And
So we don't have to go play store because we go to the store.
right. And I think it's important too to recognize there are gaps, and this is one of the things that we've talked a lot about recently, because they're at that age now where so our oldest has a college degree, and our second is going to college, and our third is on his way, and
And it
there's
all works out
gaps.
without
Right.
all of this
Yeah,
regimented academic.
exactly. So they're doing kind of typical life things and recognizing there's gaps. Like there's things that they don't know that maybe their the counterparts who went to school, their peers have those gaps filled in. But what I'm finding, and this was particularly true, we saw this, well, we've seen this now with all of them, but when they have a gap, first of all, they're able to see, oh, I've got a gap and I know how to fill the gap, and they can fill the gap expeditiously. Like they can just be like, oh, I need to learn this thing. I know how to learn. I'm not afraid of learning. I know that I can do this. And so then they learn what they needed to learn. And now that gap is filled. And so instead of kind of the repetition thing that happens through when you put them on the conveyor belt and they just do the
Filling them
same
full of
thing.
facts about
Yep.
the different body parts of a dolphin or something like that.
Right.
And they can
Yep.
go in and find out, right?
Yep. Exactly.
And
If
they haven't
that's
been missing out on what you really have wanted them to know and experience. And you were able to do that also within the greenhouse of your own home without putting them out into, you know, who knows who would be their teacher for that year. You're just assigned, and who knows if you want them with that particular teacher, if that teacher is even a kind person.
right. Well, if
There's
that's
so
the
many times it's the
example,
teacher that's the bully. you know,
getting
and
to
I've
choose
experienced that
who their
myself.
mentors are, getting to choose who their examples are. And that, I think, that is probably that's the foundation. Is so there's all of these experiences and there's all of the other stuff that goes on it, but at the foundation is who do they learn to trust, who are their examples, who are their mentors. That is priceless, because the even the experiences can come later, even, the education can come later, but who they are surrounded by, who they are learning what is right and wrong, true and false, all of those kind of things, who they're learning that from. And the other piece that I feel like was such a strong piece in our family was I recognized that my example mattered so much. That and I
Yeah.
was thinking about this recently, because I was teaching some friends about this. I said, if I was going to teach you, I love to make bread and rolls, and it's one of my, just something that I do. And when I learned how to make rolls, I thought, I could read a book on how to make bread, how to shape rolls, right? And I could read that and try to understand what they're actually saying when they're trying to describe how am I going to shape a loaf of bread. Let's use that, how to shape a loaf of bread. And then that might be kind of confusing to try to get it from a textbook. So I could go to a YouTube video, and I could watch a YouTube video and watch and be like, okay, how are they shaping that? I can start practicing and trying to do it on my own. But nothing beats having somebody standing next to you showing you how to shape a loaf of bread. That is the best way to learn. And so I think as parents and as moms, we discount so much our example and our lead. We have so much focus on them, and okay, I need to teach them. I need to go find all the materials and make it about them. Whereas if we take the lead and we show them how to dream, we show them how to set goals, not tell them, but we dream, we set goals, we start businesses, we learn things that we've always wanted to learn. And then we put ourselves in difficult situations and do hard things. Then they can watch that. There was this little kind of thought that carried me through homeschool. And it was always, I wanted my children to know that they could do and be anything that they wanted to do or be, because that's what their mother, that's what their father did. They would say, I know I can do that because I watched my mom do hard things. I watched her learn and get outside comfort zones and do things and dream and set goals. And now I know how to do that because I saw that in action. And if if we had to trade everything over again, we couldn't go on the bus and we couldn't do all of those incredible experiences, but I could only do one thing. That is what I would keep, is being that example and living my life to the fullest, because by doing that, I'm teaching them, I give them permission to do the same thing.
It's us, not them, to be focusing on more. It's that same kind of concept anyway. Of course, we're focused on our kids, but it's our own education, and what are we reading, and are we taking classes and continuing to learn about things and being entrepreneurs ourselves and so
Exactly.
forth.
Passionate. Yes.
Yes.
Passionate, serving, um, sharing, all of those things matter so much.
So what do you do though when you're finding you're just not having a the kind of day that you want to have to to show them like how it is to be, like what you want to be like.
Yeah. That's
But you're not the best of example that day.
so I actually think not being the best example is being the best example. Because if we always hold ourselves to the standard that we have to be perfect, we can't have a bad day, we can't mess up, we can't fail, then they will try to hold themselves to that same standard. And I want them to know, yeah, mom has off days. There are times that she doesn't feel like it.
Wow.
There's times that she cries and thinks, I can't do it. I've totally failed. I don't want to do it. My children have watched more episodes of me losing my mind and not feeling strong and feeling like I'm failing. And then, but the most
Also
important part,
discouraged moms, right?
exactly, is then saying, okay, yeah, I am scared. I I feel discouraged. I don't feel like I can do it. I feel like I've failed. But you know what? I'm going to try again because my dreams are worth it. I am worth it. I'm going to put myself back together. And that I think that is some of the best lessons. So, we talk about self-care and taking breaks. And if we sacrifice everything and we burn ourselves out and we have to be perfect and we can never take time for ourselves, if we set that standard, then that's what they're picking up. That's how they're going to have to live their life. And so
That's
I think,
hard, especially when they're
yes,
looking at an ideal and they're looking back. Well, mom always did this. She was so great at making rolls and everything, but they'll also remember, and how can I ever be like that? But they'll remember that mom had hard times too, and this is what she did, right?
yep, exactly. And
That
and
doesn't
and we're
look for the next
the
day.
communication, like that communication, keep the communication open, keep sharing and say, I'm really struggling. Today is a bad day. You know what? We have a term called dingus days. And a dingus day was something my dad used to talk about. It was just a day off. It just meant we would just declare, maybe we had plans, maybe there were things we were going to do. We just wake up and we're like, we're just having a dingus day. That means you go to your corner, I'm going to go to mine. Nobody's going to do anything. And we have permission to just stop, permission to just let the world go and just recoup and be who we need to be. And if there's one thing that I could share, it's that time goes by quickly, but it doesn't end. The goal is not to get to 18 and like, okay, now they know everything, have done everything, I've taught them everything. It's that by the time they get to 18, let's have character and work ethic and belief and dream and vision we can teach. The learning continues, the growth continues. It's not a race. And so if we allow that, if we just take a breath, and it's so isn't don't you think it's so much easier to say that on this side than when you're in the midst of it thinking I'm failing them, I'm gonna, you can, it's easy to get to the
They've
end and be
just
like, it's
seen
gonna be
me, like, I
fine.
don't want them to pick that up and be like their mom, right?
Yeah, exactly. But you can
But
get
they
here and say, you know
do.
what, it's gonna be okay. They're gonna be okay.
Yeah. Well, and that's such a big part of family life, and family life is so important. Something that our culture really has been downplaying so much, but it's so important. And teaching them this is what it's like to live in a family, and it's okay, and we're gonna be okay, and this is great.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we
We're learning.
need as we're moving through. When you're in a crisis, when you're moving through these times, who do you need? You need your family. And building those relationships is the best thing that we can do.
And being parents is a huge part of being leaders, and so they're gonna be parents in the
Yes.
future,
Yes.
presumably,
Yep.
and they'll be leading their own children.
Yep. And so understanding those lessons. And again, this comes back to you don't have to be perfect. And if you're trying to put up a facade, if you're trying to show up in a way that makes it so that then it's almost setting them up for failure. If the person in their life that's showing them how to be has to be perfect, how do they even live up to that? And so
It's about
give
the journey,
yourself
right? The
grace.
progress that we're making, and yes, and grace is such a huge part of it, giving yourself grace and letting them see that it's okay. I know I really messed up, and but you know what? I'm okay, and we're gonna be, it's gonna be okay. And this is what you do when that happens. We get back up the
Exactly.
next day and we keep going forward in the journey.
So true. And I'm so grateful. I look back and I'm so grateful for the years that I had with my kids. I'm so grateful. It was a madhouse. It was crazy. We failed so many times.
But it
And
was crazy on
yet,
the bus sometimes.
oh, I mean, for real, it was it was our first experience. I mean, after 4 years, we had learned a lot, but it was the first experience in doing something like that, and it was pretty crazy. And but coming out on the other side, I would never trade the time. I would never trade the days and the experiences with them. It is my most treasured gift is to have spent the last 15 years with them all the time, full time, in crazy hard situations. I'm so grateful for that gift.
You just stayed home all safe and sound and just had the kids go to government school while you got your, major roles or whatever. And then, they came home to nice baked rolls every day, right? You could have done that instead,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
And
you went out and did the crazy.
interestingly, we had to do something, and this is what I want to encourage. This is what I know, that our children have greatness within. They are individuals. They have a purpose. They have a mission. And when we put them into an education experience that's set up to educate everybody the same, to treat everybody the same, to just get an end product, we are doing them a disservice. And if we try to duplicate that at home, we're doing them a disservice. Being able to see them individually, to offer something different, to be bold enough to kind of to take and to look at them individually and say, you are your own unique person who has your own talents. Our four children are so different, and they all have had a different education. They all have different, so different. I laugh at it now.
It's almost like all different
Um,
individuals
yeah, and
all have
allow
their
them to
own
be different.
learning abilities and different things. But yeah, which is the beauty of it, that if one child needs more help in this area and another child needs help in this area, that you're able to be there one-on-one with them rather than just
Yeah.
sending them to, special ed or something like that, where really a whole lot of times they're just put in the classroom and sometimes there's things that are done for them, but a lot of times they don't get that special
Well, and
help that you think that they're going to get.
our youngest daughter has autism, and her like situation looks so different than the boys, but it's still very individual. And one of the traits of autism is they really like routine. They like things to be the same. That is just a condition that they like. And that has not been Betsy's experience. She has been moving right along with us. She was on the bus. She's always been put into challenging situations where she has to learn to adapt and be in new places and new experiences. And I look back and I'm grateful that she has been pushed outside of what might have normally been a routine, or what we would have said, well, this is the most comfortable thing for her, is to do this. And it's given her, she has strengths, and she's come so far because of what we've been able to offer her, and be able to see her as an individual and what her needs are.
And then in the future, when she has those same kinds of um, things that come up where she might be in different environments, it'll be a lot less disconcerting to her to be able to just, she can be like, I've done that before. Or
Exactly.
I've done hard things before.
Yep, exactly. Yep. I love it.
Well, thank you so much for talking with me today, Amy. I'm amazed at the things that you've done with your kids, and I love the insight that you have, and just about helping our children be leaders and all.
Thank you.
I just so appreciate you coming and talking with us.
Yes, thank you for inviting me. This was amazing. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. Well, and if any of you would like to get other help and ideas and all from Amy, I will put information for you on down below on the video
Yeah,
and
that'll be great. I have some courses that I've done, one that's called Raising Leaders, also one that's called Roar Like a Mother, that are they are courses to help moms who want to do something a little bit different, and to help their children become the people that they were born to be.
awesome. So so you have information and I will put that down below on on the video, and make sure to like and share and subscribe. And um good luck to everyone in all of your endeavors. And thank you so much again, Amy, for being here.
Thank you. Have a great day.